that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
I'm at work because air conditioning. It's 6 a.m. in the morning, and well, you see, it's like already 80 degrees, so, and my house just becomes like an oven. Anyway, I'm here to talk about Star Wars Legacy. I got cut off in my last one, which was annoying, and then this one, I don't have my notes with me because I'm at work and I just don't bring that to work. But I think I can do this pretty succinctly without getting like super nitty gritty into all the super duper details. Probably slightly spoilerly, but nothing like crazy. It might be, but I guess I'll say that for spoiler sections. But this is basically like issues 9 to 19. And this whole arc kind of just becomes Cade Skywalker, drops the Jedi off to the Sith, and he kind of, he doesn't like owing anybody anything, so he eventually gets this plan to go rescue him, and then he gets captured, and they try to turn him into a Sith, and he doesn't, and then he escapes, and that's basically the section of this chapter main plot-wise. Amongst that, we get all the backstory for Darth Krayt and how the one Sith came to be and how he came to be, along with some other revelations for some other characters that I'll get into in spoiler sections. But this section is absolutely phenomenal. Most of the artwork is phenomenal. The story's good. Everything about it is just top notch. And the thing I love about Cade is he's such a unique Skywalker because he doesn't really feel like a Skywalker, but he also doesn't feel like any of the other archetypes that we've really seen either. He doesn't feel like, there's bits of it where you could compare it to Han Solo, but he's a bit more callous, or tries to come off callous more so than I think even Han Solo ever did. And there's something to be said about that. But what I love about Cade is his ability to be so close to darkness, and yet, unlike everyone else we really see in the expanded universe, whether that be Luke or Anakin Skywalker, Jacen Solo, Jaina, actually the best comparison would be Anakin Solo. But Anakin Solo was always like this bright light that never really seemed to be tempted by darkness. Whereas Cade is such a, you go to clean your car and you use a dirty rag, like it's already like black from like all the smudges that you've done previously and you didn't clean it. So now you're just using that, and it's like, it's going to clean the car, but it's not going to be as effective as like just using a new rag. And so Cade has this ability to be so very, very close to darkness, like consistently and often, and yet never is ever really tempted. Cade's going to do what he wants to do. If he does something that's seemingly a dark decision, it's because he wanted to, not because he was influenced. Because that is a thing, because you can't be influenced by the Force. This is verifiable. Go read the entire expanded universe before you talk, because it's a thing. It is just a thing. It is a fact of the universe. But Cade is able to circumvent that fact, which makes him unique. And Krayt continues to be a phenomenal villain. Even though very much so that Darth Talon is very much sex appeal. Let's get those teenage boys picking up the comics. She is still actually a pretty intriguing character despite that. Like, if you remove all the sexualness, she's still interesting because she was born a Sith and she truly believes in it. So it's interesting to see her talk about the Sith and what it means to be Sith and why it matters to be one, coming from her perspective. Though I feel like, as a whole, just remembering the series didn't do much with that. And since I know that by the end of Legacy 2, she's still alive and so is Darth Nihil, that both of them have some actually really intriguing conversations. I would love to see them be in the forefront in a Legacy like 3, which we'll never get, but I would love to see them be in the forefront. But yeah, overall, I think it's phenomenal. I think it's great. I want to get into some spoilers, so if you don't want that, he knows time to bail. So, the big thing, which is that we get the backstory to Darth Krayt, where he reveals himself to be, if you didn't know it by now, if you haven't been spoiled online, then you know that he is Ashrod Het. The same Ashrod Het that was in those early Star Wars comics in the 2000s or late 90s with Ki-Adi-Mundi. We met Sharad Het, and then Sharad Het died with the Hutts and everything fighting, and then Ashrod Het became Ki-Adi-Mundi's apprentice. This character's been around for a long time, at least chronologically speaking, and so it is crazy to realize that he, in fact, is this Sith Lord that has terrorized the galaxy as Darth Krayt, which again makes the name even better because him, just like Luke Skywalker and Anakin before, they all lived on Tatooine originally. And I love the Tusken tribe. We get it a bit more in depth in certain stories. We're not counting Disney canon with the Book of Boba Fett, but if you look at the Kenobi novel by John Jackson Miller, you get a lot of characterization, humanization of the Tuskens. And I mean, to be fair, there are some Tuskens that are native to Tatooine, and there are other Tuskens that are kind of adopted into it, kind of like, I should say forcibly put into it, kind of like the Mandalorians, but Mandalorians is a choice. It wasn't always a choice, but that's a different story. Anyway, so Sharad Het was a Jedi and then went to go live with the Tuskens, and then Ashrod Het was just kind of born into that. So he's a Tusken, even though he is in fact a human. So that's like so perfect that he would name himself Darth Krayt, like the Krayt dragons on Tatooine. It's wonderful. It's brilliant. And then we get parts of his backstory in issue 16. We learn how when Order 66 happened, he escaped, and eventually made it to Tatooine. But this is after episode 3, right? So who else is on Tatooine? Obi-Wan. And there's two things to this too. One, Ashrod's like, well, I failed as a Jedi, so I guess I'll go back to being a Tusken, but use my Jedi powers. He's not trying to be Sith or anything. So he's trying to reclaim stuff for his people, if he can't do anything else. But there's two things here. One, Obi-Wan is just a good person, and they are terrorizing innocent people. Sure. This is very much like an analogy for colonization and, like a bunch of people that this wasn't their land, this wasn't their planet, and they took over. Think freaking Dune with Arrakis and the Fremen. But regardless, there are people living here, not some of them were born here, which does not give them equal right, even if the people that initially settled are not. The people that are born here were born on the soil, So there are, innocent children and stuff, and the Tuskens are trying to kill all of them and stuff. So it just makes sense that Obi-Wan as a good person would try to stop that. But secondly, you make too much of a ruckus. I mean, sure, the Empire is evil, and Tatooine's kind of out of the way, but you make a loud enough noise, eventually you will attract attention, which Obi-Wan can't have because baby Luke. And I would assume that this flashback we get happens after the events of the Kenobi novel, where we're already having the Tuskens be a huge thing with Bright Eyes or whatever, I forget the name. And so if you have Ashrod Het show up sometime after that and again cause ruckus, that also fits. But so, Obi-Wan fights him, cuts off his arm, takes off his mask, which immediately makes the Tuskens walk away from him. So he's disgraced with his people. He can't come back. He's no longer a Jedi. He's no longer a Tusken. He has nothing. So, then we cut away. We just cut back to the present for a bit. The next time we get a flashback, we learn that after, he gets beat by Obi-Wan, he just becomes a bounty hunter for a time. He becomes like Zek and just is a bounty hunter for a bit. But as he's hunting down a target, he makes his way to Korriban, and he is the ancient spirit of Zazen, one of the very first Sith acolytes, which again, whatever you believe about supernatural encounters, one thing that I think is absolutely phenomenal is that, like maybe in some source books she exists, but like first time I read this, I'm like, who's Zazen? Why do I care? Some Sith they just made up for this, series, like what? But supernatural encounters makes that encounter so much more interesting because, and I think this was already established before supernatural encounters, but still, she is one of the very first Jedi who left the Jedi to do their own thing. The very first iteration of what would become the Sith, it was those first exiles. It was those first groups of people. Ajunta Paul in KOTOR, like, she's one of those firsts. So she teaches him the ways of the Sith. And while he's in there, he just doesn't age, I guess. He's like, but when he finally emerges from there after learning all these Sith things, he hasn't actually embraced the Sith yet. He just has accepted a bunch of knowledge that he's learned from it. And when he comes out, he's like, I'm going to murder Palpatine for killing everyone that I love, like all the Jedi that I cared about, and for turning the world on what it is, only to find out, oh, it's already been taken care of because Luke Skywalker did it. So he goes out to the unknown region just not knowing what to do, only to find the Yusung Vong, probably like half a year to a year before they would show up in the New Jedi Order book series. And he gets captured and tortured for a year, or like 6 months or something like that. And that's where he gets sick with the Vong implants that makes his cool suit of armor in these comics. So then we get that full backstory, and we learn that, after he eventually escapes the Vong. And then another controversial thing here, and this is coming from an apologizer. I'm always here quick on the defense of the Denningverse. I hate that term, by the way. I've said this multiple times. But we have Vergier show up, and she acts very suspicious. And again, she never calls herself a Sith, but I can very much tell that was John Ostrander's intent. And Crate, Ashrod, he definitely, from his perspective, believes her to be. But again, we never explicitly get her saying that. And I think that's my biggest cope, but it's a legitimate argument, though, is that every time we hear that Vergier is one thing, it's from somebody else's lips. We never actually get to hear it from her lips what she is. So I can have my cake and eat it too. But that was really cool to see her visualized in visual medium. So it was very cool to see. And yeah, I absolutely love those sections. And then one of the other things we get is we get this entire sort of thing with Morgan Cord, this awesome sort of spy, bounty hunter sort of person. She's really cool and stuff. To find out by the end of these certain issues anyway, that, and this wasn't a surprise to me the second time because of course I already know, but that Morgan Cord and Nyan or whatever, the Imperial lady, are in fact the same person, which is a very cool revelation. And again, Dryson and Delilah Blue continue to be just really cool characters, and Kay just continues to be such a unique and interesting individual. And I look forward to what we have coming next. But I'll meet you all next time for that, in part 3 of my Legacy rereads, when we see what happens in those sections. Anyway, until next time, may the Force be with you.